Stay beside me, Clara. No one gets to decide your worth but you. The words landed like a quiet verdict as laughter rose. The conference room's glass walls threw the skyline back at itself. At the front, a young woman in a faded blazer stood behind an old laptop, fingers trembling. That was the moment Miles Donovan, the company's youngest CEO, pushed back his chair, crossed the carpet, and offered his hand. The mockery had started with a glance at her scuffed shoes and a whisper about a community college badge. Clara Jennings had ridden 2 buses before dawn, rehearsing her pitch between stops. She had 1 intern slot to share her concept. And a stubborn, steady hope. She thought the work might be enough. Instead, the room measured her by labels and polish, not by the grit it took to get here. "Are we upgrading her laptop, or is nostalgia a strategy now?" someone murmured. Snickers rolled like marbles. Clara clicked to her opening slide and lost her breath. Her proposal. Gathering real customer stories in barbershops, corner groceries, and Saturday flea markets, then weaving those voices into a neighborhood loyalty network, suddenly felt small under the cold lights. At the far end sat Trent Wallace, famous for polished certainty. Beside him was Paula Green, who catalogued risks like stamps. They traded a look that said the verdict had been reached before the pitch began. Miles reached her side and faced the room. "That's enough," he said. Not loud, but final. He turned the laptop toward him and extended his other hand. "You're nervous. Present to me. Everyone else can listen." His palm was steady and warm. In that public, unembarrassed gesture, he reset the balance. Laughter died. Clara drew in air, felt his hand like an anchor, and began again. She spoke about how trust lives where people wait, barber chairs, deli lines, folding tables stacked with used books. She described small sponsors from those streets, a referral code printed on receipts that opened a low-cost benefits portal, and a pledge that if the company profited, a slice would fund neighborhood projects chosen by customers. Her slides weren't glossy. They were close-up photos she'd taken herself, wrinkled smiles, handwritten notes, kids racing between booths. Silence followed, the honest kind. Trent leaned back. "Do these neighborhoods buy premium? We're not a discount brand." Miles kept his eyes on Clara. "She's building trust. Trust is the most premium asset we sell." Paula tapped her pen. "Optics. If a corner shop posts something messy, we end up with a headline." "People are messy," Miles said. "If our story only works in a showroom, it's not a story. It's a script." Warmth rose in Clara's cheeks, not from shame but relief. She tightened her fingers around his, an unspoken thank you. After the session, Miles walked with her through a corridor of framed patents and plaques. At the elevator he released his hand. "You did well," he said. "I almost ran," Clara admitted. "I don't come from rooms like this." "Neither do I," Miles said, and asked about her commute and her mom's night shifts. In the lobby, he introduced her to security as if she were a visiting partner. "I can't promise the board will fund your pilot," Miles said. "But I can promise to fight for it." "Why?" Clara asked. "I'm just an intern with a borrowed blazer." "Because you're right," he said. "Right deserves a chance." Pushback began before lunch. Trent scheduled an executive sync that felt like a hearing. He leaned on words such as scalability, exposure, precedent. Paula flagged professional boundaries, the phrase heavy with insinuation. A rumor started, the CEO and the intern, hand-holding, optics. PR drafted language about avoiding imagery that could be misread. Clara kept her head down and finished a spreadsheet with shaking hands. Miles messaged Raymond Ellis, the board chair, "Meet me on the support floor in 20 minutes. Hear her where the work lives." They didn't gather in leather chairs. They stood among headset cords and coffee mugs, the hum of customer emails rising like a tide. Miles introduced Clara without fanfare. She laid out the pilot: 3 neighborhoods, a dozen shops, referral codes printed on receipts, micro-incentives redeemable at local vendors, a community fund seated with a slim slice of returns. She showed a hand-drawn map with pins like small stars. Raymond listened. "And if it doesn't convert?" he asked. "Then we learn out loud," Clara said. "Even a miss proves we tried with people, not at them." Raymond looked to Miles. "You're backing this?" "With 2 conditions," Miles said. "We hire locally for every test site. And if we profit, they profit. Not charity, partnership." Raymond nodded. 2-month pilot. Clara, consult as project lead. Miles, you own any fallout. Fair, Miles said. News traveled fast. Forks paused in the cafeteria. A manager whispered in a stairwell. Security guards traded quiet smiles at the turnstiles. Clara rode the bus home with the approval memo tucked in her bag like a warm piece of bread. She texted her mom. The reply came back with a storm of exclamation points. At dusk, a message from an unknown number lit her phone. "This is Miles Donovan. If you're comfortable, I want to walk those neighborhoods with you tomorrow. I'd like to listen where we plan." Clara typed, "Yes." "No cameras. No staged photos." He replied, "Agreed. Sneakers, not suits." She rested her head against the bus window as the city stitched on its lights. For the first time in a long while, possibility felt near enough to touch. She began shaping questions for the barber with a candy jar and the grocer who saved bruised fruit for families. Tonight she would iron her blazer, mend a loose thread, and set her alarm for early. When the bus hissed at her stop, she lifted her face to the streetlight glow. She wasn't invisible anymore. Somewhere in a high office, people were arguing in the language of risk. Out here, the city spoke in small, steady ways: an open door, a broom across a threshold, the bell over a shop door. Clara tucked the memo deeper into her bag and headed home with a stride she didn't have this morning. She didn't speak aloud. She would not let this chance shrink to fit other people's comfort. She would walk those blocks with Miles and listen until the plan belonged to the neighborhoods as much as to her notebook. When it was time to present again, she would keep her eyes clear, her hands steady, and her voice faithful to the streets that carried her here. Morning found Clara outside a small barbershop at the edge of Brookfield Avenue. Miles arrived in a plain hoodie and sneakers, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "No cameras," he said, handing her one. "Just ears." She smiled and nodded. Together they pushed open the glass door. The bell above it jingled, and Mr. Coleman, the barber with salt and pepper hair and a steady smile, waved them in. He was halfway through a fade on a teenager when he said, "Sit, I'll be with you in a second." The place smelled of talcum powder and coffee grounds. Clara explained the pilot gently, outlining how the neighborhood loyalty network would work. Mr. Coleman tapped his jar of lollipops. "See this? Kids come in just for these. Free mints matter. A Saturday backpack raffle matters. Being remembered matters more than points hidden in an app." Miles nodded, scribbling notes. They left the barbershop and crossed to a small grocer who stacked bruised apples into a bin marked, "Free for families." The grocer liked the idea of codes printed on receipts, but only if people without smartphones could still vote with tokens in jars. At a florist's shop, the owner wrapped single stems for children and suggested setting aside tokens for art classes in the back room. Each visit stitched more reality into the idea. By noon, the plan no longer belonged only to Clara. It had grown, shaped by hands that lived with the small rhythms of these streets. Over sandwiches on a bench, Miles said, "Leadership isn't louder. It's steadier." Clara thought back to the time she'd found a stranger's wallet, returned it, and used the small reward to buy her first college textbook. "The smallest things change everything," she said quietly. When they returned to headquarters, a storm was waiting. An industry blog had picked up the story of the CEO holding an intern's hand. A grainy photo circulated online with speculative captions. HR sent a memo demanding an urgent briefing. Paula emailed the board about perception risks. Trent fired off a note to PR, if this blows up, the fire belongs to Donovan. Raymond Ellis requested a status meeting. The boardroom was tense, colder than it had been the day before. Paula sat with her memo like a weapon, Trent's polished watch flashing each time he folded his arms. Miles entered without a tie. Clara, invited but not required, sat quietly at the far end. "We need clarity," Raymond said. "Are we defending business value or battling optics?" "Both," Miles replied, "but honesty first." Trent's deck suggested the pilot was a distraction with thin margins. He ended by flashing the blog headline and the photo of two hands. "What's the cost of defending sentiment?" he asked dryly. Clara stood. "This project doesn't need a rumor to stand," she said firmly. "It needs discipline, listening, and metrics. If you want me farther from the CEO for optics, I'll comply. But I won't step away from these neighborhoods to make the brand look neater than the lives it claims to serve." Miles added, "We'll codify boundaries, no solo meetings, all site visits logged, roles documented. Not because intent is wrong, but because perception matters and this work deserves a clean path." Paula's lips pressed thin, but she couldn't object. Trent looked frustrated that his scandal theory had been defused. The pilot launched. Clara trained two field coordinators, Carmen Lee, sharp-eyed and tireless, and Josh Miller, who knew how to turn spreadsheets into clarity. They placed jars in shops labeled with 3 potential projects: a laundromat library corner, free fruit bins at the grocer, and Saturday art classes at the florist. Customers dropped tokens after small purchases. Paper receipt codes led to a website where they could vote or leave notes. One note read, "My grandmother feels proud when Mr. Coleman remembers her name." Another, "Art classes would keep my little brother busy for 2 hours." That's priceless. Clara built a dashboard to track redemption rates, repeat visits, and increases in basket size. She still kept a handwritten notebook, though, ink smudges alongside raw numbers. Miles visited twice a week, never alone, always careful. By the end of the first month, the results surprised skeptics. Repeat visits climbed, weekend sales rose, and when the first jar goal was met, neighbors celebrated like it was a holiday. The laundromat library opened with a shelf of donated paperbacks and a poster drawn by a 7th grader. A local blogger covered it, photographing a grandmother reading while her clothes tumbled dry. Trent tried to seize control. He proposed turning jars into premium branded displays and rolling out influencers for photo ops. Paula suggested a polished community webpage that smoothed out every messy human edge. Clara objected. These places should look like themselves, not like an ad set. The jars are not props. Raymond sided with her but asked for comparative testing. Clara agreed to run a limited trial with branded signage, while protecting the authenticity of the rest. In week 6, a boy named Leo Carter came into the florist's shop with a sunflower drawing that stretched across an entire page. He asked if the tokens were magic. The florist smiled and said, "They are, if adults keep their promises." Clara taped that line above her desk. The second jar filled. The grocer stocked a bin of free fruit each Friday. A teenager grabbed 2 apples, leaving a thank you scribbled in block letters. At the barbershop, Mr. Coleman promised, "If this jar fills again, we'll fund backpacks in August." Clara recommended matching contributions, and Miles made it happen. The final review came on a gray morning, rain streaking the boardroom windows. Clara, Carmen, and Josh presented together. They shared charts, neighborhood letters, snapshots of children coloring at folding tables. Trent grilled them on costs. Paula hovered over compliance clauses. Raymond asked calm questions about sustainability. Finally, he looked at Miles. What do you want? Expansion, Miles said simply. 5 more neighborhoods. Profit sharing codified. Boundaries written. Trust scales if we protect it. Raymond nodded slowly. Approved. With one reminder, keep the jars simple. If a customer can't explain the program in one walk down a block, we've failed. After the meeting, congratulations came in mixed tones, genuine, grudging, or silent. Trent stormed out. Paula accepted the boundary checklist Clara handed over. Clara and Miles stepped outside into sunlight breaking through the clouds. You were right, she said. Right really does deserve a chance. You were right, Miles answered. I just refuse to let them bury it. They stood together on the busy street, shoulder to shoulder. Clara glanced at the tower of glass and steel behind them. It no longer looked like a fortress. It looked like a place where promises could travel both ways. She turned to him. Stay beside me, she said, not a plea, but a challenge. Stand where it's harder, where it's kinder. Hold the line. Always, Miles said. And if they laugh again, we'll keep building until the only thing left to mock is how stubborn hope can be. They walked toward Mr. Coleman's shop, past the florist's window bursting with color. In the glass reflection, they looked like 2 ordinary people heading to work. Which was exactly the point. The city hummed. The jars filled. And for once, the company kept its word.